today is going over the tale as it is described in one of these relics. More specifically, we're going to be looking at the British Museum papyrus numbered 10,188 to retell the creation myth. Pretty much all renditions of the ancient Egyptian creation story deviate in wildly varying ways. To the Heliopolitans, the creator of all was named Atem. In Memphis, he was Ptah, and to the Thebans, Mammon. Deciphering which story is the canonical baseline is difficult when there are so many versions. Fortunately, the British Museum papyrus is one of the few examples of a text that is supported by another ancient source, meaning we're going to be utilising it as our canon here. Let's begin. The first words of the tale are uttered by a god named Nebertcher. He is the equivalent of the Christian God of all, his name meaning Lord to the uttermost limit.
I am he who came into being in the form of the god Khepera, and I am the creator of that which came into being.
He begins the universe by first speaking a word of power and forming his physical body into the shape of a god named Khepera. With another word of power, Nebertcher creates his soul, which harmoniously connects with his physical heart and mind.
I formed myself out of the substance that is primordial matter, and made myself out of that which is in primordial time.
Finally, he utters the words to create a universe that he can inhabit. Nebertcher continues on, naming whatever he chooses to name. With each word he says, something new comes into being and populates the heaven and earth he has made.
Heaven had not come into being, and the earth did not yet exist, and the children of the earth and the creeping things upon it had not yet been made.
Included amongst these new creations are animals and insects of all shapes and sizes. Nebertcher combines them in their different forms, building a lineage that flows down to the wildlife we see on Earth today.
I myself raised them up out of the watery mass of Nu, from a state of helpless inertness.
The all-powerful Nebertcher asexually reproduces himself and emits the gods Tefnut and Shu from his mouth. This act separates his aspect into 3 distinct entities, which still include his original self. He is the father of these new beings, but he is also one with them. As Jake Jackson says in his book on Egyptian myths, the one god became 3. Tefnut is the ancient Egyptian goddess of moist air and rain. Her brother Shu is the god of dry air. Tefnut and Shu bond together and produce 2 offspring, Keb the earth god and Nut the sky goddess. From amongst the primordial waters of Nu, Tefnut and Shu also discover Ra in the form of the Eye of Nebertcher, or as we would call it, the sun. Mankind appears next in this tale. Humans arrive in the form of tears shed out of the eye of Nebertcher onto the lands of the earth. In fact, in the old Egyptian language, the word for tear looks and sounds very similar to the word for man. Ra comes to Nebertcher soon after, but the great lord of the gods has unexpectedly grown a new, lesser eye in Ra's place, the moon. The god of the sun is wrought with anger at Nebertcher, and so the lord of the gods punishes him by taking his light into the moon to be dominant for a short time. When Ra's light dissipates in the evening hours, the sky goddess Tefnut lowers to bond with the earth god Shu, creating the black sky of night. Upon the darkened world come the plants, trees and herbs of the world. These are poured into existence by the light of the moon, which then submits its light back to Ra for a short time. Isis, Osiris, Set and Nephthys are each created next from the pairing of Keb and Nut. Isis is the mother goddess, or the goddess of the birth process. She is sometimes also seen as the goddess of wisdom and magic. Osiris, her brother and storied lover, is the god of the underworld, the afterlife, and of rebirth. Isis and Osiris bond to form Horus, the god who will eventually go on to become the first pharaoh of Egypt. Set is the god of chaos and the representation of the desert, of storms, and of violence. Set is the famed antagonist who will go on to murder his brother Osiris and fight Horus for the throne of Egypt. Nephthys is the goddess of the death process. She is directly opposing to her birth-giving sister Isis. Set and Nephthys finally bond together to form Anubis, the jackal-headed god of the dead. The world is now formed,